What's good, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Web3 Experience. I'm your host, Mosey. Today, I'm here with Scott and Chris, founders of IGL City. Excited to get into the discussion today. So yeah, thanks, Chris. Scott, thank you for joining us today. Excited to get into the discussion, talking more about IGL, talking more about everything you guys are involved in. So to kick things off, I'd love to hear more about, both of your backgrounds and what experiences led you into business together.
My name is Chris Shadley. I'm the CEO of Fishbowl Labs and the co-founder of IGL City. My background is not Web3, not gaming. My background actually comes from 23 years of working in Hollywood, working on movies and TV shows, everything from stuff like Spider-Man to the Muppets to TV shows like Call Me Kat. So when I kind of got into Web3 really heavily was during the pandemic, a lot like everybody else. Like I had dabbled a little in crypto before that, but when, the entire world shut down, that's when I really kind of dived in. It was like, I've got a little extra cash, I've got nothing else to do. And so at that point, I also kind of found the community aspect that Twitter had. And in a time when you weren't able to leave your own home, it was a really good way to connect with other people. And what really kept me in the Web3 world was that community. It was the idea that I'm meeting people from all facets of life. I'm making new friends from different areas of the world that I've never talked to before. And we're all kind of coming together with this one common thread. And it was a very different style of conversation than what was happening before pandemics, because it was all of us actually trying to help each other out, which was kind of new to this world of like business and investing and stuff. Usually it's like you try to keep those plays for yourself, where this was more like you come together as the community and everybody wins. There's a term called WAGMI, and a lot of people are like, what the fuck is that? And it's we're all going to make it. And in the Web3 world, that WAGMI was the fact of like, if we all work together, we all kind of come and we help each other out along the way, then we can all rise up together. And so I really kind of resonated with that. And then as it kind of delved a little bit deeper towards like NFTs becoming more of a thing and understanding not just what, the idea of I can buy this picture and it's worth a huge amount of money, but what the NFT could actually mean in the future, like that store of digital assets and that proof of digital ownership and all of the things that people forget about when we start talking about like floor value of pictures that we own. That really struck me on where that technology could lead us in the future and how that could give us, ownership and financial freedom and resources that we never had before. And then everybody started saying this word Metaverse. And for me, Metaverse, coming from the film industry, I hear that word, my brain instantly goes to Ready Player One. And so when I looked at what all of the projects that were out there, everybody was building great stuff. But everything was like, you have to have this token to get into this world, and you can play this thing in this world. And then you have to go to this world, and you have to have that token to get into this world. And It all just kind of felt very disconnected and discombobulated. Whereas my idea of Metaverse was like, there's these places that you can go to that are these worlds full of stuff. And whether I'm looking to go dancing with my friends at the club, or I want to go watch some comedy, or I want to play a video game, I can go to one spot and find that. That's where I always saw the Metaverse. And so for me, I didn't see that being built. So I had met Scott through the kind of Web3 community. And before we ever started this, we kind of actually met up IRL because we live in the same town. And there was just kind of like this instant connection. Like I would talk about things and he would kind of get it. And we're kind of opposites in a way, where I'm a very kind of passionate, emotional, kind of outspoken person. And he's the more like analytical, subdued, like when he starts talking, there's something he's super passionate about. Otherwise he just kind of like reiterates the points in the background. And so there was a really great balance. And I never expected that when I called him up and said, hey, I got this crazy idea. I know I'm not a game dev and I know you're not either, but let's build Ready Player One. I was really kind of shocked that he didn't just laugh me off the phone and hang up. But that kind of led to where Scott and I are now. And, I'm taking my experience from virtual production and all the different things that we do with special effects and things in the film industry, and kind of putting that into the idea of the city, to where I bring to the table more the kind of storytelling and the underlying, aspects of that, where Scott is more the gaming side and knows where the gamers want to be and what things make those games interesting and exciting. And then we got really lucky and found this kid, Ricky, in Virginia, that is just a master at working in Unreal Engine and building out environments. And it all just kind of started from there.
Awesome. If you give your background first, then can you move closer to the camera because the mic, so the mic can pick you up a little more?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, with getting Web3, I mean, I found Web3 through Top Shot with a couple weeks left on closed beta. So I joined initially for financial gain. And then once I figured out once what this tech was and what IP ownership meant, I spent like probably 6-7 months just not really diving in, just doing a bunch of research and learning, educating myself, because up until that point, the only knowledge I had was that Bitcoin was a store of value, so I could essentially make money on it. I didn't know why, but I just knew financial gain. So once I figured out what IP ownership meant, it actually stood out to me because I don't own any of the artwork I make. Like I got movie posters all over Amazon, Hulu, Netflix, whatever it may be, but I don't own any of it. My name's not attached to it. Unless I tell you I made it, you'll never know. So that's what really brought me in here, the ability to create artworks and own it and have my name attached to it. Even if I sell it, I still maintain that IP right. So after I started gaining a deeper understanding, I started building a network, and I spent like a year doing that. And the way I met Chris, I kind of just went around shooting questions to people that I already knew the answer to, just to see how they would respond, because I was looking for people to work with. The main one was, how should I present myself as an artist? And I knew the answer to that question. I just wanted to see what people's responses were, see what kind of person they were. So that's how I met Chris. I asked him in a space for this project that he had relationships to a community with, and I joined that community, and things kind of just kicked off from there. Started talking, making ideas, and then we started executing on them.
Awesome. And now you guys, I know you're committed to building out IGL City. Do you guys want to tell us, what the core mission of IGL is and what future plans you guys have for building out your own Ready Player One metaverse?
Yeah, Chris, you want to go first and I'll follow it up?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea behind IGL City was to kind of have a combination of places. So you've got, people building out games, you've got people building out metaverses, you've got people building out social experiences, but those are all great, but how do you bring them all together? And that's what we weren't seeing. And so for me, IGL really is kind of a combination of all things. Like I always say that IGL is an experience from Go. So the whole idea was to build an actual like interactive social city. And so what we did is we started off by designing the way the city was going to work. So there's going to be things like stores and clubs and, movie theaters and games and all of these different things. And all of these experiences need to be easy to access and easy to switch between. And then on top of that, it has to be something that's fun for people that aren't gamers, for example. Like I'm not a huge video gamer. I'm not going to sit there and hop into Proving Grounds, which is a third-person shooter game, and have a great time. Scott's going to love that. But what do you have for people like me that are more I don't really play video games. Why do I want to get into a digital world kind of thing? But then I thought back to like when I was a little bit younger, and I remember playing stuff like The Sims. And there's reasons that like these kind of like social simulation games exist. It's because you kind of want to find that space where it's like when life sucks, you've got a place you can go to that you can kind of live a different life that isn't the monotony or the bullshit that you're going through today. And so we really kind of worked on IGL in that respect, to where let's figure out how to make this environment something that's engaging, something that's fun, something that people want to come and spend time into. And then let's focus on how we could maybe put blockchain and Web3 and all of that into the game, so that people actually can use it for what it's designed, and not just worry about, what's the floor value of my NFT going to be? And especially with like the way that the things have gone in the past with gaming, there was all these like blockchain based play to earn games, which in my opinion has never been a sustainable model up to this point. In the future, maybe somebody will figure it out. But at this point, it was all based on the value of a coin, which is all based on the value of crypto, and anything happens with that, then your whole system goes down. I mean, we kind of watched the collapse of Axie Infinity when that happened. Crypto drops, and then all of a sudden you've got a whole group of people that stop playing because it's not viable for them to do it. Yeah. Because they focused on the wrong aspect. The whole reason we do these things, whether you sit down to watch a TV show, whether you go to the park to go for a walk, whether, whatever it is you do, you're doing those things for a very good reason. Like any of this type of thing that we're talking about is all entertainment. You're doing it to change whatever mood or whatever you're doing to put yourself in a place better than where you are, or something different than where you are. And in order for that to work, you have to have experiences that work for everybody. And so with IGL, we really kind of tried to build that out to where when you get into IGL City, you get to create an avatar. using Ready Player Me. You get to make something that either looks like you, or you can design an avatar to look like whatever you want to be. And then you get to play every aspect of IGL City as that character. And you can create multiple characters. So maybe today you feel like, kind of a punk, and tomorrow you feel like wearing a suit and tie. Well, go ahead and create those characters and bring them in. On top of that, it needed to be an experience where there was something for everyone. So if you're not a gamer, you can hop in IGL City and you can go shopping at actual retail stores. Like we have Charles Jeweler, who's a jeweler out of Florida. You can go shop around and look at his jewelry, and then walk up to a kiosk and actually order the jewelry to be sent to your front doorstep right inside of the game, never having to leave to go someplace else. If you want to go find new music, you can go hang out in the club and listen to EDM. You can go to the music store and find artists that are, up and coming artists that don't have labels, and find new music. You can go watch comedy routines in the comedy shop. Watch right now, we have movie trailers playing in the movie theater, and, we'll be releasing and opening that up for people to release new content that way, to like find new eyes. And then for the gaming experience had to be just as seamless. So like if you're just kind of hanging out and having a good time, like everybody's got that buddy. Like when you get in to play a game, like you all say, let's all hop on at 8 p.m. And then by like 8:25, there's still that one guy you're waiting on to like join in the circle, right? So what do you do for that 25 minutes? Well, now you've got something to do. You can go run around the city. You can go watch some comedy. You can go shopping. You can listen to music. You can, go run on the obstacle course, kick soccer balls on the beach, whatever it is that you want as a group, kind of keeping you guys together in that social experience. And then when it's time to go to the game, you all just meet up and run into the front doors of the arena. For example, like Proving Grounds Arena. To get into it, you go to the giant dome that says Proving Grounds and you walk in the front door. It'll automatically load you into an instance of that game with all of the friends that walked in at the same time as you. And it's going to randomly assign you guys to teams, and you just get to play elimination. When you're done, you hit a button, you're dropped right back in front of that Proving Grounds arena, and you can go explore different parts of the city. Maybe you want to go do the zombie survival game. That's a first-person melee only. Try to survive and get through the course, Like the obstacle course is a very wipeout kind of thing. It's more designed for like the people that don't like the shooter or the scary games and just want something fun and different. So if you're like a Fall Guys fan, there's something for you. But branching into the future, we're looking very much like a Roblox style example. Like, we can build out some cool stuff, but the imagination of the people that are going to be coming into the city will far exceed anything we could ever imagine just as us. So what we plan on doing is opening up different plots of land within the city and handing the users builder tools. So they don't have to know how to program in Unreal or design video games. They'll have all of that stuff inside the game where they can literally just kind of drag and drop and manipulate and build out the experience that they want people to have. They'll get the choice to either, monetize on that if they want or not. That's going to be solely up to them. And it needed to be free to play. So like IGL City itself is a free to play game. You can download the city, you can run around, you can go shopping, you can do all the things that we're talking about. When it gets into stuff like builder tools and land creation and things like that, like we want to know that you're committed to the platform. So there will be memberships. So we'll have 3 different tiers of memberships. We're still figuring out exact pricing on what that's going to be, but those will include things like you'll have your own private apartment that you'll get to decorate and make your space. And if you have friends come over, that's your own personal private space. You'll get seasonal airdrops, like, different shirts. Like if it's St. Patrick's Day, you'll wake up one day and there'll be a t-shirt that says "Kiss Me, I'm Irish," in your inventory that you can wear on your avatar for a little while. The memberships will give you opportunities to build out the land and create your own experiences. And it'll get to a point where the user content is so vast that, anything that you would want to find, you'll probably be able to find within IGL. But then the difference that we're doing is we're also looking at other people that are building things very similar to what we are, because we're never going to be the one and only. There will never only be one only metaverse type of project out there. So how do you work together? Like in Web3, we have this very unique opportunity that nobody's had before, where like these gaming companies right now are all kind of like battling against who's going to be top. Well, we're all small builders against people like Activision and Epic and Blizzard and all of these big, and EA and all these big companies. And we're never going to knock them off their podium individually. But if we in this Web3 community and in this kind of new space that's developing out there can all kind of come together and kind of share and work together, we may not win as a single, but we could win as a whole. So I've been reaching out to other experiences and saying, okay, why don't we take a little piece of your experience and let people come experience that in IGL? They'll get to see what you have to offer, and we'll give them a way to be able to find you. And then we have you put a similar like mini IGL experience in your metaverse or your world so that people can find us. And there's no reason for us not to share people back and forth. Like maybe they don't want to do a shooter game. Maybe they want to go do something that's completely different. And there's that experience over here. Well, let's show you what that experience is. And when you're done with that experience, let's give you an easy way to come back and find new experiences within IGL or new experiences with other partners. And then on top of that, there's a lot of people out there that are getting into the idea of building, but they don't know the ins and outs of what that actually means. So like building a video game is not as hard as it sounds, but getting that video game into the hands of the public and what's required on the back end to be able to make that happen between like the servers and the networking and all of the things like that, and all the additional costs that nobody thinks about, those can be overwhelming to a lot of small developers. So the other thing we wanted to be was a platform to where these small developers could have a home, where if they can't afford those types of services like that, they can come to IGL and we can give them a space. We can build out a spot where people can walk into the front doors of their building and they're loaded into this completely separate experience that was built by whatever this project was, and really just kind of make it open and fun. And, the main thing is it has to be fun. If it's not fun, nobody's going to keep coming back. So we focused on fun first and then
I wanted to touch on, I think one thing I wanted to touch on that was really important is talking about how everybody has different realities across the world. Like, to put into perspective, like League of Legends had more viewership than the Super Bowl. Like, beyond work life and everything, all we have is pretty much entertainment in different ways, right? So a metaverse, a virtual environment is just this next shift of entertainment that's accessible to the whole world, because a lot of people aren't able to go to see the pyramids or go to Antarctica or go to a FIFA World Cup game. But if you can get immersed in an environment that is somewhat similar and you can feel somewhat more of a heightened interaction with it from your home, people are going to shift that way. It's inevitable. And also shifting into like partnerships and collaborations, I wanted to talk about, I know you guys have been teaming up with Web3 brands, and you talked about tapping into your community to help them build out your project. So like, can you elaborate on the relationships that you're building and explain the importance of community collaboration and Web3 versus Web2?
We're actually bringing a lot of Web2 into this as far as partnership goes. We're definitely looking at Web3 products, especially ones that we find suitable, but the majority of partnerships we're seeking at this moment live within the Web2 ecosystem. And the reason for that is we don't want IGL to be mainly for Web3. We don't see that as a viable onboarding process, whether it's from a consumer or from a business standpoint. We thought it would be more applicable to begin with a Web2 based structure and onboard the majority of the community into Web3. So that's kind of where that initial idea began from. As far as the partnerships, we're utilizing our network. Chris and I have a lot of connections within the film industry. We have a lot of connections within the Web3 industry as well. But I mean, that's really the idea behind it, just creating more of a simple onboarding process, bringing the communities with the businesses that we're onboarding.
Yeah, and to give you a couple of examples of the types of partnerships we have, like one of our first partnerships and one of my favorites is we're actually partnering with a company called Wooger. And Wooger is one of those things that really kind of gives me that like smile when I think about it, because it's that next level of when I talk about like Ready Player One, like, he put on a suit and he could feel, what was going on in this universe. And Wooger actually makes a full haptic feedback vest that, it's got these different actuators and 6 different motors on it, basically. So like if you're in the shooter game and you get shot in the back, you're going to feel that. And so we're going to have a storefront for Wooger where you can actually buy their product right inside the city. That'll get shipped right to your door. We have a couple of giveaways that they're going to be doing with us. We have a mobile game that we're putting out relatively soon, hopefully, depending on when this airs. It might just be releasing or just about to release. And we'll be giving away a Wooger haptic feedback vest to one of the winners of that mobile game. And that's in combination with a project called Beast. I mean, it was one of those Web3 projects that gave us like 3D avatars and IP ownership and said, go build. So you hand that to somebody like me. I'm like, okay, what can I build that's going to be fun and entertaining? And at the time, BAYC had done a really good job with this thing called Dookie Dash, which was a great little game that they had been doing. I saw one inherent flaw with it, though, is that the fact that the only way you could play is if you were part of that ecosystem already. So either you owned an ape or you owned a mutant or you had, over $2,000 to go buy a pass, you could finally play this game. And so, with ours, it was the idea of putting out a game that was open to anyone, whether they have any clue what NFT or blockchain or any of that is, bring people in and let them kind of see what IP ownership can mean and really kind of hope to inspire, people to build new things. But, we are also partnered with people like American Ape. I mean, the guys at American Ape have done a really great job of building this really great lore and comic book and all of this stuff around their Bored Ape and everything. And they had started building out this metaverse. But again, they were one of those people that didn't know once they got it built, how do they get people into it? So they come to people like us and a couple of other spaces and they give us their projects and we load people into that experience and give them a home. And then also just a home for individual creators. Like if you're a normal guy that's, got a t-shirt business online because you make really cool designs, come to us. We can open a storefront in the city, let you put up your designs, put people straight into your website to let them order the product from you. Nothing has to change. All of this change is not something that's easy for people to understand or accept. Like my wife hates change. Like she doesn't want to learn how to use the remote control because there's too many apps and she doesn't want to have to remember what app has what show. And a lot of people are like that. So in order to get people to change, you have to give them those gradual little pieces. And Web3 was never gradual. Web3 was like in your face, here it is, like it went on a run. And the problem with the run is at the end of the run, it starts to fall. And then you get all of those people talking about like the bad part and not what the good part was or how this happened and that happened. And not all of it is actual accurate information. So if you take a different approach and you ease people in, let them use the technology, not understanding what it is 100% because they don't need to at this point, but they start to see the benefits of like, there's something different here. Like I can do this in this place that I couldn't do over there. And how are they doing that? And then people start to wonder. They start to dig in a little bit on their own. They start to make those changes for themselves. And that's where the acceptance comes. So like, especially with businesses, like you're not going to get somebody that's a Web2 business to take a big chance on Web3 because all they see is the volatility of crypto going up and down and the stories that mainstream media give out. But if you can give them a chance to get into a digital experience that's different than what they've been doing than just the standard website, that's more interactive, but they don't have to change anything. They don't have to like integrate huge APIs on the back end. And most people like you go to a small business owner and like, can you just integrate this API into your website? They're like, what's an API? They're worried about their business and they don't have the time to conform to what somebody else wants them to do, especially these smaller people that, we don't want the giant, businesses like an Amazon and stuff. They don't need us. They've got their own stuff. We want to bring everybody to a kind of a level playing field and give everybody an opportunity. So in order to do that, you got to do it in a way that's simple.
Yeah, definitely. And I liked, I think a great example and the easing is trying to explain the use cases of these virtual environments to people in ways that make their lives easier. So like when we shift into these virtual environments and you said that, so like take, for example, shopping, right? People are going to be able to be in a virtual mall environment with different stores. And we're already seeing all sorts of different brands, Gucci, some makeup brands, there's all sorts of Adidas, Puma, they're all entering the metaverse, building their own or creating wearables, yada, yada, yada. So when they start shifting into these means and you have a virtual environment that people can, go to the Miami Design District, but in a virtual sense, be able to walk through every shop, not have to wait outside, wait in line, it's all about making your life easier. So you're going into these shops, you can click on something, view the item either in the interface or on their own platform. It just redirects you to their website where you can purchase instantly. Like e-commerce is shifting into a way where in this new world, in a metaverse, you're going to have a proportionate avatar to your body metrics that you can click something, try it on yourself. Does it fit? Does it not? Obviously there's that feel in real life that's different, but there's just going to be, you can go and try on everything in a whole mall in an hour from your living room. It's like e-commerce is going to explode in retail, especially.
Exactly.
So how do you guys?
Yeah, the idea behind that was convenience and variety. The convenience to be able to shop within the ecosystem you're already participating in. You don't need to go to another website. You don't need to leave and go to the mall. It might be raining one day. Like it's raining out here in LA. I'm not going to the mall today. I'm not leaving my house. And as far as variety, a lot of the major issue I see within the other ecosystems at the moment is that they all appeal to one demographic, which is gaming. And gaming is a huge market, but it's not the only market. And the idea we wanted to portray was that we have something for everybody here, and something for everybody even within our e-commerce structure. So right now we have a cannabis store. In California, you can go get cannabis delivered to your door from IGL City. You could go shop for jewelry. You could go shopping for clothing. And we're adding in more products every day, and we're just going to keep expanding upon that variety so that we have something for everybody within the ecosystem, not just gamers.
But when we talk about something like that, that also brings up something that we should address, which is security concerns. So, like Scott mentions that there's a cannabis store in IGL City. Well, if I'm a parent, maybe I don't want my 12-year-old seeing a cannabis store and going in and exploring that, which, I fully understand. I'm a parent myself. And so what we're doing is we're working with people like Token Proof to where we can actually do a third-party age verification KYC, or know your customer. So you can actually submit to a third-party verification company that will verify your ID and everything, and say that you are 18 years old or 21 years old or whatever, and then we'll issue a token to you in IGL City that shows that you're of verified age. And so what ends up happening is when you're walking through the city, if that token doesn't appear in your inventory, when you walk by something like the weed store, you're not going to see the weed store. You're going to see some cool, pretty murals that would be on that corner instead of actually seeing that store. So it really is about making sure that we be smart and responsible about the way we build it out as well, not just like give instant, easy access to things like cannabis and things like that to young people as well. One of the biggest things that Scott and I have that we do with IGL is education. And so the security aspect like that is big to us because, if you go to the actual story of Ready Player One, the original purpose of the Oasis was schooling. And I still believe that to be true. Like I have my stepson has a friend who never got to go to high school because his mom just didn't want him to go. Not because he didn't want to attend school, not because he didn't want to learn. He just didn't get the opportunity. He sat at home and played video games all day. Now, what if that same kid had something like IGL where he could hop in and he could attend classes and he could learn real world skills and all of those things and potentially even walk away with a GED from playing a video game? How many lives could we change? How can we better the world by being able to give education to people that may never have any other access than, the 20, 30, 40 minutes or so that they can maybe get into this video game? And, I believe that you'll actually get a lot of kids that will take that opportunity because, we say the kids don't want schooling, but as soon as school went away for like the pandemic, my kids were dying to go back to school. And it was both the social aspect, plus they kind of wanted to keep learning. Like when you stop learning, you kind of stop living. If you're not learning something new every day, then you're probably doing something wrong. So, so both of those are big components to security and education as well.
That's an amazing point too to bring up. Is like you can form these experiences to your liking, right? So whatever IGL, if you want it to be a 21 over experience or a more child-friendly experience, in the same way that your social media algorithm kind of feeds you what you want to receive, in the same way, like when you enter these virtual worlds, you can kind of have filters for what you want to what you want to achieve. You want to get educated, you want to go to entertainment, like this is funny, but there's like I always see rappers posting videos with like those VR headsets at strip clubs in the metaverse or in these virtual environments, just like tipping via like Cash App or Venmo or crypto or whatever it is. And then like the funny ass videos where people walk in and they're like touching the air.
Those are funny.
Yeah.
Videos,
Yeah, it's just being able to form your own experience, and there's no limits to what you can experience. And
as far as your imagination.
It kind of like, I'm older, I'm in my 40s. So it's like, I think back to when I was a kid, and one of my favorite things was like, every week I would get a new book that was a choose your own adventure book, where it's like you got to read and you got to a certain point and it's like, okay, if you want to do this, turn to page this. If you want to do this, turn to page this. And, that one book became multiple different experiences. And in a sense, that's kind of what we built here is IGL is a choose your own adventure, because we drop you into the city and we give you all these different choices. And every time you hop in, you can make a different choice and have a different experience. And so it really was all about that. And I didn't know if it was working until there was one day that Scott hopped into the city with one of our buddies, Andre. And our developer had built in some lore into the city and hid these little things around where you follow the clues and it pops up messages and blah, blah, blah. Scott and Andre didn't know about it yet. And when they found out about it, they literally spent the next 2 hours running around the city together, talking on Twitter and Discord and like, kind of searching each other out. And if you were to ask them at that moment, if that experience was a virtual experience or a real world experience, I think the line would be very blurred, because it feels, even just watching them and being a part of it with them, even though I wasn't like even in there with my avatar, but I was just watching them do that experience. I felt like I was going on that journey with them. Like I was talking with them. I was telling them little hints on where to go to find stuff. It became a very visceral experience versus a very digital experience. Even though the experience really was digital, that connection, that like human interaction of like, hey, follow me over here. And even though you're pushing a button on a keyboard and watching something run, there's a very different thing that dopamine release in your head that makes this feel like a very real experience, even though it's digital. And that's what really
like the storylines more so sell, collections, NFT collections, movies, entertainment, all those things. And it's funny that you mentioned the textbook concept. Like I remember in middle school, there'd be like, turn to page 5, turn to page 70, turn to page 100. Usually, the journey ended with a picture of a penis at the end of the book somewhere. Yeah, that's usually how it ended.
But in middle school, for sure. Like in mine were actually like they actually were good content, but by the time you got it back from your friend, there was a drawing of a penis.
No, mine was usually like Benjamin Franklin with like a colored in, full body with a penis.
Yeah, like one of these presidents with like devil horns.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny.
Yeah. All right, so
we've been doing the same thing forever. This is just a new version. You go in. Like I was at an NFT event last night, and it's like this is the first time a lot of us had met up in the real world, and I was amazed at like we're all standing in the same room, but 70% of the people still have their fucking phone in their hand, like glued to it. Like, what's going on in the digital world? It's like,
Yeah, I don't like it either. I like to do this.
So if that's going to continue to perpetuate, how do you mix those two? Because like when I grew up, my first computer was like, you plugged into a TV and it was green text on a line and it created little digital pictures. And like my first experience with the internet was waiting for like the AOL CD to show up in the mail so I could get that 1 free hour, and then hope that, it sucked for me because my mom sold real estate. So like people were calling the house all the time and kicking you off the internet. I'm like, man, this sucks. But now it's like everything is so like connected. Like you've got this device that's just in your hand that can do anything. And so you lose some of the kind of personal connection. So how do we bring that back? And experiences like this, in my opinion, are what kind of start that connection back. Like you have these experiences in the digital world, and then hopefully what that translates to when you get into the real world, you want to move those experiences into the real world as well. So as a company, we have to look at that, at the same respect of like, not only do we want to build the digital environment, but when the digital environment becomes popular, we want to bring the digital world into the real world with things like, there's this really cool thing called projection mapping where we can take a warehouse and put up blank walls and we could literally set up a ton of projectors and you would walk into a warehouse and you would feel like you're standing in IGL City. Like it would like, so immersive experiences like that will bring people together, and give them a reason to put the phone away, to connect with the human.
For so many people, I think that virtual worlds, seem like large scale distractions from the physical world too. They're like, no, you're going to turn into a dystopian society. Don't do it. Like you're losing your sense of reality, yada, yada, yada. But anything, done not in moderation is bad for you, right? So you have to find that happy balance. And, we know from being immersed in the culture that this is just merely an additional layer of human interaction. Like you said, like you felt like you were on that journey with them. People play these Fortnite, Travis Scott concert, this and that, they're in these experiences with their friends, communicating in real time. It feels like, obviously that's not possible for a giant Travis Scott head and all of these cool fireworks and laser show, whatever. That's not possible in real life.
Right.
So you can only experience those things digitally because it's limitless what we can imagine. And, can you guys explain the importance and just elaborate on that? Like building a global community, because crypto Web3 is global. People all over the world need it. And, more so all over the world than the US. Adoption is much higher everywhere else and where it's applicable. And then explain that importance of forming that community digitally, globally, and then transitioning that. So you could host events, in London and in Australia and all these different places, and you'll have community, you'll have friends there, people there that you've met through a digital medium that you can then interact with physically. Because physically, bro, we don't interact with a lot of people. A lot of people are shy, scared. They don't trust people. They don't want to interact with you. If you smile at somebody, they don't even want to smile back. Like, it's a different world we live in.
Yeah, I'm gonna
right, and that's one of the things that the digital world really kind of gets to help us out with, and I'll let Scott elaborate on this as well here in a second. But when you get into an environment like a digital environment, and you get to create an avatar, and you get to go out there, and you get that freedom to kind of just be yourself and be accepted, because you aren't getting judged by the way you look at that moment, or by what perception might be, or the way you're dressed, or what car you arrived in, or any of those things. And so you start to make these human connections with each other. Like, if you've ever been on Twitter Spaces, like, I have a lot of friends now that I would have never imagined I would have. And they're all people I've met through Twitter. And a lot of these people are people that I've now come to know in real life, Scott being one of them. Like, he and I became friends through Twitter. Now, we're partners, and we're best friends. And so, it's taking that idea of being able to give this kind of global reach and kind of global platform for people to come together, get to know and interact with each other. But then if you don't have some way for that to kind of translate into the real world, then it doesn't really do much good. It gives you a release, but as soon as you put the keyboard down or the mouse down, or you walk away from your screen, or you put your phone down, you're back into what the real world is. Now, how do you translate that? And the way you can do that is by these communities. Once they get to know each other, like, you have a much easier time if you're at a meetup with a bunch of people you've been hanging out with in this digital environment for months, that you've had conversations with, and they know who you are as a person. It's easier to come out of your shell in the real world, because these people aren't judging you now. They don't care what you look like. They already know who you are, and you get to build those real world connections. And on top of it, you get to meet people from all walks of life. Like, I've met people from every corner of this country, or not only this country, but every corner of this world. I've learned about different ways that different things interact, and how different cultures work. And to be honest, a lot of what I hear from the people that are actually living there is very different than what I'm told or what I see in the media. And so my perceptions start to change. My opinions of people start to change. My thoughts on things start to change. And it becomes a global change. And I think a lot of that is why big corporations and like governments and stuff don't want this to come out, because we get to start telling each other the reality versus the reality that we're fed. And I think that's amazing and scary at the same time. It's scary to see how much disinformation is out there, but it's amazing to see that we can all kind of come together and, even have heated discussions sometimes about like this idea, that idea. And at the end of the day, we still all kind of walk away and come back the next day and have whole new discussions and move forward. And I've never seen it happen in my lifetime. And I hope it continues. And I love the exchange of information, and that's the most valuable thing. But you've got to have a place that brings all of these people together to give that exchange. And as that grows, I've always said that, we spend a lot of time on this planet, and if we can't leave it even just a tiny bit better than the way we found it, why were we here? And so for me, that was this goal. I made movies because I wanted to, I was the kid that was picked on. I used movies as an escape to get away from my reality. So making them to give somebody else that escape from reality was a big thing and big driving force in what got me into making movies. And the same thing is with this type of thing is like, I see these experiences out there, but it's very cliquish, like high school. Like, if you don't own our token, you don't get to be a part of it. Well, that's just separation again. So I wanted to give people a place where they could feel like they just get to be them and come and have a good time and meet new people and build and get a break from this kind of shitty reality that we all live in at this moment. And hopefully it all kind of trickles out at some point and we start to see the world start to change and we all start to kind of come together now that we're all talking for a change, which we've never done before.
Definitely.
So that community part was really everything for me too. I mean, when I was growing up, I was always looking for people like me, I mean, I have a lot of friends where I grew up, but I'm not like any of them in any way, shape, or form. And it took me finding Web3 to like really find my people and where I stand, you know what I mean? And on top of that, as far as the actual community basis, when I was growing up, I'm self-taught in basically everything I know, and I've lived in like 9 or 10 different cities since I was 18 or 17, and I would always reach out to every production company I could find within like a 5 to 10 mile radius, just looking for a mentor, looking for somebody to ask questions to. And I never found it. I never found that mentor, never found anybody to help me with anything. I just had to do it myself. And that all changed once I found Web3. Like once I joined the Bored Ape ecosystem, I mean, I'll never forget, I reached out to Crypto Painter, which is somebody I've always been a big fan of. I'm very aware of his work and what he does even before Web3. And I reached out to him and he answered me, and I started asking him a bunch of questions and he helped me out on some things. And the reason I got that point of contact was because I was in the Bored Ape ecosystem, and that held importance to me and it opened up a new world for me. So being within these communities actually changed my life to a point of access that I didn't have before I entered.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, just putting yourself out there, and like you said, I mean, like Chris said, take dating, for example. When people meet online, they start talking through these social media dating sites, they get to know each other. When you meet for the first time, it's not like that first date where it's just like a blind date. You have an understanding of that person, you're not a judgmental, the ice has been broken kind of. So same thing goes for the digital to physical transition. Once you experience something with someone, for whether it's digital or physical, for a certain amount of time, you're going to build a relationship, and that just enhances it on both ends of the spectrum. Once people realize that you have to use technology as your friend and not view it as your foe, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We found a place of belonging, and we found access to more information, and that information propels you forward.
And Chris, what you said too, like, the reality is that much of the information of the world is marginalized and sectionalized into your own region. Like, I was in Australia, they have everything's .au, here is everything's .us. Like, you're only seeing certain web pages, certain information, certain news sources that you're supposed to see, so the government has a good control and good grasp on their citizens. If everybody has a clear picture, if everybody has a clear picture on what's happening around the world, they're going to start, because what happens around the world is fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like I say, I mean, it's even a little deeper than that. Like, you can get, just within the United States, you can be in 2 different states and see 2 very different versions of the exact same story.
2 different TV channels. One channel up or one channel down, you'll see one perspective of something that fits their demographics bias, and then another one that fits their demographics. Yeah. It's the same shit.
So it's like, I've been on Twitter Spaces where I'm talking to somebody from the Middle East, and what we've been told in the States is that these people are a certain way. And you know what? Maybe some are, but that's not everybody. It's not the masses. And that's the thing is, if we give people the platform to be able to come together and to do things where they get to inform each other of what the reality is, I think we'll see a huge change. And, as much, as my wife would love to see technology not rule the world, the change is coming. And the question is how are we going to use it, and who's going to drive the way that it moves forward? Do we want the big corporations that already kind of have that stronghold on what everything is doing? Do we want them to be the ones to tell us how to do it? Or do we want to step up right now in this infancy period and come together as multiple builders and, people all over the world and dictate ourselves, this is how it's going to be. And guess what? You don't get a say in it. Like, we get to have the power this time. And so we have to embrace the technology but we also have to make sure that we don't let the technology run us, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's like, if you're going to build a digital experience, how are you going to make sure that that digital experience also branches into the real world? Like, what can you do that brings real world people together? Like, if we're only ever connecting on a screen, nothing is really ever going to change permanently. But if we can connect on the screen and then take that connection, like you said, like the idea of going a first date and never meeting the person, you're hoping the person shows up, you're sitting there waiting to see like who's going to sit down. Whereas like if you've already had these like online dating chats and stuff, you've had conversations, it's like you meet up and you just continue where you left off. Like that whole ease of use is gone. Like, you know, you just get to relax and you get to really figure out who each other are. And so that same idea with this, like we do these digital experiences, we find ways to have, you know, real world experiences, but then we also make sure that whatever real world experience is out there, you let the people that can't make it experience that with you, so that they don't feel like they're left out. And, you know, it's going to be an interesting time to figure out where that balance sits and how it's all going to play out. But I think working together is the only way we get there.
Definitely. Unity's powerful, man. I appreciate you guys joining me and discussing, you know, IGL and, you know, the Web3 community and just kind of the world at large. Help people gain a new perspective of the world always helps. Absolutely. Thanks for having us. I mean, this has been great. And, you know, hopefully soon when we get IGL radio up and running, we'll get you in your podcast playing so people can come listen to this one and all your other ones, you know, make sure that we've got ways for people to connect as well. So. Oh yeah. Looking forward to it, man. Well, thank you guys for your time. I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you.